Right now, there is a ton of hype. Everything that could go wrong, the news media are jumping all over it. And everything that could go right, the news media is jumping all over it. The point is they're jumping over everything in order to publicize, and sensationalize. So right now is a really confusing time. You have some reports that are saying, "Oh my gosh, the bottom is falling out." Yeah, but then at the same time, you read another report that says, "Oh my gosh, it's better than pre-COVID, and we haven't even opened up the economy yet." So you got all these conflicting sort of messages. I think people really have to get grounded in the research and specifically the fact-checking kind of research they need to do before they start jumping to conclusions. Because this is a moment, Patrick, where you could feel like you're missing out. And having, you've been doing this now for coming up on 40 years,
long time.
Long time. The point is that you've been through many of these situations where you felt like you were maybe missing out. What are your thoughts on that, and what do you think people should do about that?
Well, here's a couple things to consider, JG. Number one, there's never been anything like this before. And to add to the confusion and the uncertainty that's out there, the topic of COVID is actually becoming more and more polarizing. Is it real? Is it fake? Mask, no mask? A shutdown economy is an economic issue. Is it a health issue? These things are throwing a lot of uncertainty and questions in, but they're also creating a lot of distractions for people. And then now, if we look at the economy overall, we can go down all sorts of different paths. What does it mean to be likely $1 trillion in debt, given what the federal government is doing to prop up the economy? And what does that mean to a population of 37 million people? It's a big number, and likely will exceed that by the looks of it. Now, when we look at that particular number, what have we got? We've got money being pumped in for CERB. We've got money being pumped into some small business programs. We've got the economic shutdown of the borders. We've got supply chain breaks. I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening, but right now we're living in a little bit of what I would refer to as a false economy. And that false economy is actually going to continue, but at some point, it's kind of like musical chairs. The music's going to stop, and then everybody's going to be scrambling for a chair. And there's just not going to be enough chairs, and there's not going to be any music starting up again. So what's happening right now is an adjustment in the market, especially in the housing market, given what people are trying to do. They're trying to get affordable housing. Interest rates have come down. You're looking at a breakdown of what's happening in urban centers versus suburban demand in a nice price point that demand's really coming up. Then you have to look and say what's happening in the rural areas, because more and more we're starting to see a migration and a demand for rural, because they want to get out of that urbanized area and get more bang for their buck. Why is that? Well, because people can work from home. So I can go on for quite a long time about this topic, as you know, JG, and I can get a little bit fired up about it. But when you look at what's going on regionally, as real estate investors, we have to look, we always get, aside from the confusion and the uncertainty, you have to look at what's causing it. And then we have to just back up and get grounded in what are the economic fundamentals. Now, the challenge that we face as real estate investors is there's a lack of data. And then even the data that you're getting, the lag time of it is, it's by the time we get it, it's already old and things have changed. So let's get back to what's going on in the market. The unemployment's high, but because of CERB and people receiving that $2,000 a month check, we've actually got a labor shortage, primarily in the service industry, let's say. Let's just talk about that a little bit. Now, that doesn't drive housing prices, but it does drive consumer buying, and consumer buying drives businesses, and businesses drive employment. And what we have is then this kind of cycle that is being broken down and compromised because businesses aren't opening. I read an interesting stat, which was in small and medium enterprises, small, medium businesses. There's just over 1 million of them in Canada. Now, if we say 15% of them aren't going to go, well, they expect 15%, this is a published number, a guesstimate, of course, but they're estimating that as many as 15%, maybe more, will not go back into business. Now, when you say
1.5, right?
1.5, okay, that doesn't sound like 15%. You go, oh, that's bad, but it's not that bad. But if you break it down to what 15% represents, it's about 150,000 or more businesses in Canada will not hang their shingle back out to do business. What does that mean to the job market? Well, guess what? 150,000 businesses, even if they only employed one person, which we know it's more than that, is still a lot of jobs lost. So yes, will business come back, and will people come in and innovate and react to COVID? Of course, all of that will happen. We have to look at we can't look through rose-colored glasses, but we have to look at what's really happening in the economy. And so my kind of observation is that in the housing market, specifically around investor focus, because that's what we do, of course, we need to get grounded back in the economic fundamentals, which is, we know unemployment's high, we know GDP is falsely inflated right now, even though we're not getting a real GDP number, we're getting how much it's down, but we don't even know what GDP is, and it's a false statement anyways, given it's being driven by our federal government, which is something they needed to do, and we can get into politics and all the rest of it. But ultimately, JG, is that there's in the context of missing millions, this is not, I would highly recommend caution. And I believe that, the very experienced investors will make decisions that make sense for their portfolios. The newer investors, I would caution to slow down and be really aware of why they're buying that property. So they're not buying the property because of hype, because of FOMO, that fear of missing out, and that it makes sense in their portfolio. They have an exit strategy that makes sense. So a long-winded answer, and I'll be quiet now.
No, I think it's great, Patrick, which is, you really got to focus on, you talked about exit strategy, as an investor, whether you're experienced or new, you really got to be asking yourself, timeline, how long do you plan to be in the market for? If you got a tight time horizon, yeah, it gets the risk factor goes up significantly the shorter your time horizon right now, given the market unpredictability of this market. If you have a short time horizon, you want to get in and get out relatively quickly. If you don't have, you also got to think, Patrick, from a perspective that if you only employ one tactic within the real estate space, like if you only do fix and flip, again, that's not a very diversified strategy right now, and that could really increase your risk. So the less diversified you are, the higher your risk. The shorter your timeline, the higher your risk. Does that mean you shouldn't be doing real estate? No, not necessarily, but you need to have a sophisticated approach to it, Patrick. You need to be dialed into the research, fact-checking the research, and fact-checking the hype so that you're making wise decisions for your financial freedom plan.
So true. And even mainstream media is so off course so often, talk about fact-checking, who says we shouldn't be fact-checking our mainstream media? I think we have to. We look at real estate regionally, which is what Rain has talked about for many, many years and continues to talk about. What's happening in Western Canada is different than Central Canada and even the East Coast. So, I'm looking today at what's happening in Calgary and Edmonton, for example, and we know that what's happening economically right now is on top of already some pain that they were feeling, and they were starting to see just some green shoots. Now we have to look at what's happening. So then when you're making those decisions in an Edmonton or Calgary market, Red Deer, Lethbridge, whatever it might be, Grand Prairie, you have to look at it through a different lens than you're looking at it, than let's say an investor's looking at it in, Hamilton or Peterborough, your backyard. So these are all things that we have to consider. But I want to stress something, is the lag time between an economic downturn, like when things kind of hit the fan like they did back in March, there's a lag time that's happening. Now that lag time is even being extended because of the federal capital investment that they made, like, the central banks and all the things that are happening in behind the scenes. And to look at just the housing market would be a mistake given what's going on. We have to look at all parts of the economy now. And although Canada's driven, the housing market of Canada drives, our GDP a lot. It's a big part of our GDP. We cannot negate the fact that small, medium enterprises, small, medium businesses are really, really being handcuffed right now. Some of them are being shut right down. Now costs are escalating just because of what they have to do. Restaurants, 50% capacity, et cetera, et cetera. So these will have an effect that won't be felt, arguably, I think optimistically.
And there's still, Patrick, speaking of operating businesses, everyone knows that you operate business, I operate business, and there's a lot of business owners out there listening to this. Right now, the business landscape is not a true picture because you still have payroll stimulus. So there's still a ton of stimulus coming into this economy that even if restaurants are open now at 50% capacity, at 30% capacity, if that stimulus goes away, they may have to shutter down because we don't know. And I don't think they know either. But the point is that there will be an effect there and you have to monitor that.
Entrepreneurs ultimately Canadians and entrepreneurs are resilient. And we will pivot, not unlike RAIN in terms of what we're doing from research and how we've taken our meetings virtual and all the things that we did as an organization to be the leaders in this space. Other businesses, many businesses are pivoting, and I've had several really, really great conversations. Having said that, it's going to take some time for all of that to catch, to get a grip, to get traction, and to start to move forward in it. And along the way, there's going to be some opportunities. Now, we come back to what we've been talking about, JG, in this particular segment, what we call missing millions. Missing millions doesn't mean necessarily taking action today. I'll use I've lost his name. As I'm so apt to do so.
Let's say Mr. Jones.
Mr. Stock, the big Berkshire.
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett. Thank you. How do you ever forget that name? Boy, oh boy. Anyways, the point is that Warren Buffett, like many, are sitting on cash and they're sitting on the sidelines. Why are they doing that? Because they know there's a disconnect between what's really happening economically and in Warren Buffett's case, what's happening in the equity market, in the stock market. There's a disconnect between what's happening in central Canada, I believe. There's a disconnect between what's happening economically and what's happening in the housing market. And that disconnect, the disconnect is based on what's happening economically versus what's going on in, let's say, central Canada, in that Southern Ontario market. And so these are things that are flags for me that I'm saying, I think that some patience will pay off in future opportunity.
Well, that's like you said, I think future opportunity is the answer there. And I think that a lot of people are looking for opportunity. One of the most challenging things to do in real estate, in any business, is to stay on the sidelines when it looks like it's going so well. And and listen, we've missed a lot of waves like that, but you also, you have to be aware that there's a possible repercussion that you're also avoiding. So point is, more information to come, folks.
Yeah.
That's what this
meeting. We got a member meeting come up July 16th.
Yep. Next week.
Next week. And we're going to be there. The research team has been working their butts off in behind the scenes. And Jennifer Hunt, our VP of research, will be kind of leading the way on that. I've been pretty fired up to do some additional research that expands even on what the research team is doing, because it's kind of an area of interest for me right now.
Eyes wide open.
Pretty excited about it.
Eyes wide open, Patrick. Eyes wide open. I will say this, folks, RAIN has never been more present, more grounded to help you. We have our Renovate the Profit program just recently came out, was a smashing success. We have our turnkey system for renovation success, Patrick, which we have two more special events this month. And we have a whole system. We have a whole software. We have a whole program coming on around that's way beyond a home study course. It's actually a system for success. It's actually the nuts and bolts, the planning, the job tracking, the software that we use to do this stuff. That's coming out this month. More research coming out this month. RAIN member meetings coming out next week. Patrick, it's nonstop, baby, at RAIN. We're not slowing down. We're speeding up.
We're speeding up because, there's now more than ever people need information, and really good information. If you haven't had the opportunity, if you're watching this and you haven't had the opportunity to watch or listen in on the Everyday Millionaire podcast, Sherry Cooper, amazing, an amazing economist, head economist for BMO for many years, then Dominion Lending, was a great guest. We did a really, really great call interview with her. Coming up is Carl Gomez, Ben Meyer, and just locked down another guest today, but I'll share that one later on. But all about economics and where Canada's going. We want to stay on top of it because that's where the opportunities live, is understanding, staying grounded in what's real, and not buying into the hype.
You got to be in the know to get the opportunities, to see the opportunities coming. If you're not in the know and if you're not on top of it, and there's nobody can do that for you, folks. You have to do it yourself. You have to do the work. You have to ask the questions. You have to critically think. And whether or not, and thinking is the hardest work we have to do, by the way, the hardest work, as Napoleon Hill used to always say. But yeah, it's good. So Patrick, this has been fantastic. We got a lot of stuff going on at Rain. Hopefully we're going to do another one of these next week. We have a big ELT retreat next week, so that's exciting. And I'm sure we'll be posting some pictures and posting some lives on what's going on at the ELT. So folks, thanks for watching. Please, I would like to know a couple things. I'd love to know how you're doing. Put it in the comments. I'd love to know how your rentals are doing. Put it in the comments. I'd love to know if you guys are seeing a different experience of student rentals. Patrick, one, we should do a whole Missing Millions on student rentals. I have a very strong opinion of student rentals, but it appears to me in the property management business I own, I run, and that I'm around, that student rentals are starting to churn. It's starting to flip, and they've literally been on pause since March. It has been impossible to get them going, but it's starting to change, and I'm curious to see if anybody else is feeling that it's coming. So we'll see, and lots going on, Patrick.
And lots going on. And what's interesting about what we're starting to see as well, JG, just to not step over the point, we've been going on a while here, but understanding that it's more regional than ever. Every city, every province is different rules, different phases of opening, different views of the world, of what's happening and how they're going to protect its citizens. A couple things we shouldn't step over. Edmonton, as an example, just today, are looking at budget cuts to their police force, and they've actually put a proposal on the table looking for civil policing. It's just a proposal, just a plan. But the point is that, which is what I talked about right from day one, what Rain talked about right from day one, when we saw how this was going, we said there is going to be municipal cutbacks because of the depletion of tax revenue, businesses shut down, people not spending dough. And guess what? Budgets are being cut by the cities severely. What can you anticipate from that? There's going to be tax increases, particularly on property taxes. That is going to be a factor going forward. And you can count on that the same as you could count on the revenues being diminished. So
now, and I'm going to end on this, Patrick, because I love what you just said there. And what's interesting about that is, so you just said the words increased property taxes. And if people are still watching, which we don't even know if people ever watch these things, by the way, I'm just kidding. We know. But when you say those three words back to back, half the people watching this just lost their shit. Half of them just thought, are you kidding me? I can't believe it. And as someone who owns lots of real estate, and as do you, Patrick, folks, I could tell you this, you can react that way, which is fine. And you're okay. You're allowed to have that reaction. But also keep in mind that those increases in property taxes may very well lead to the opportunities you're actually looking for. Just keep that in mind. The point is your reaction to what's happening is all you can control.
Good. That's it.
So focus on that. We'll leave you on that. Patrick, thanks for doing this, pal. Have an awesome day.
You too.